You're listening to a podcast by the Perennial Leader Project. Our final topic is on anxiety. So before I read the passage, which comes from Epictetus in this one, it's day 71, if anybody wants to go back and give it a listen. You know, how do you think about anxiety? Is that something that, I mean, it's obviously comes up quite a bit in modern language, but is it something you dealt with when you were younger and stuff like that?
Yeah, everyone does. I think the anxiety conversation it's a way, my feeling is it's a way, people don't understand that it's something that everybody struggles with. And I guess I'll tell you the story of how I, started thinking about anxiety. I think when probably the story that comes to mind is when I was young, and I was probably in my mid-teens, and I was about to perform at like my high school concert or something. I was playing a song, and you can imagine like you're getting ready to go up and perform in front of tens of people, because I went to a massive high school, and people will ask you, people, your mother or your girlfriend at the time or whatever. Are you anxious? Are you nervous? And I always responded, I didn't put a lot of thought into this. It's just how I responded. I don't know if I'm anxious. I'm excited. And it took me, I don't know, 20, 25 years, I guess, to really think about what that means. If you look at the physiological response between anxiety and excitement, the only real difference is breathing. So when people are anxious, they're not breathing. They're enclosed within themselves. They're worried about something. They're driven by fear. They're focused on negative consequences. And when you're excited, it's the opposite. You're focused on the positive thing. I get to go perform, versus I may go up and perform and look like a fool, versus I get to perform and have fun at this thing. And a lot of times, to bring you from anxiety to excitement is just a simple breathing exercise. That's it. And so I think I'll let you read the quote here, but the first most important point I can make about anxiety is that it's a normal human experience. And then it gets back to, I think, fundamentally what the Stoics talk about all the time, which is, what's your perspective on that feeling? And it turns out that physiologically that really matters when it comes to anxiety and excitement.
Mm. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And this is, I think we could go from many different angles around this, but Epictetus is, like he usually does, it connects it with this thing around desire of like what's up to us, what's not up to us. And you mentioned there in terms of perspective, obviously that's something that is up to us, how we think about these experiences. But he writes, when I see someone in a state of anxiety, I say, what is it that he wants? For unless he wanted something that was not within his power, how could he still be anxious? That is why a musician feels no anxiety when singing on his own, but becomes anxious when he enters the theater, even if he has a fine voice and plays his instrument well, for he wants not only to sing well, but also to win the approval of his audience. And that is something that lies beyond his control. That comes from Discourses 2.13. It seems like, I mean, obviously, Epictetus is kind of simplifying it. Then there's more to say. I just pulled a short passage, but it's, it kind of puts a pejorative a little bit on, he wants to win the approval of his audience, and it seems like there could be something noble and virtuous about thinking about the actual audience. He wants to perform well to give the audience a good time, to honor the money that they spent to attend this thing or whatever it may be. It seems like there could also be something virtuous in it as well, or service oriented.
Sorry. Yeah, so I love that he this quote, because it goes into what I just talked about, which is the musician thing. You know, you're performing, and there is a call to excellence when you're engaging in the world, including when you're performing music, when you're at your job and you're trying to be really great at customer service. Like, there's a service portion of what you're doing that is important, and it's important to move towards it and to focus on it. But I think that's the real thing here. Like, what Epictetus is saying here, and he's absolutely right in this distinction between that I made earlier between excitement and anxiety. Anxiety is fear of a negative outcome, and excitement is excitement to participate in something. It's excitement about living in the now, being able to do something that you're looking up to and looking forward to. Whereas anxiety is, well, I what if I go up there and I make a fool of myself, and then I get a lot of people they don't like what I'm doing, yada yada yada, and it just spirals out of control there. What I would say is that from a practical point, this idea, and this is really important, because sometimes we think that anxiety, like we don't have any control over these things, and we don't to a large extent. We're human beings, things happen. But I've also seen musicians at the high school concert go up who clearly did not practice at all. And so Epictetus has a line where he says, I'll paraphrase it, but it's something like, if you accept a role that you are not ready for, shame on you, man. And that's true with jobs, that we sometimes we take roles that we're not ready for. Sometimes we choose to go up to perform in front of a bunch of people, even though we really have no business doing it, because we've never taken the time. We haven't really cared enough to practice this thing and pursue excellence. And so when it comes to this idea of excitement versus anxiety, if you've practiced, if you've prepared, if you know that I'm doing this again for the right reasons. I feel like I've honed a skill, I've practiced, I feel like I have a gift to give here, and I want to go do this thing, and I'm going to maximize my agency on it. I'm going to practice, I'm going to try and put on a good show. That's stoic versus not doing that. What's unstoic is saying, I'm going to expect that the audience loves everything I do. I'm going to expect their approval. I'm going to rely on it at all. And so, yes, Epictetus is absolutely right here. This idea of anxiety in this situation being, yeah, I'm worried about a negative outcome. And guess what? Outcomes are not up to us as Stoics.
Yeah. It makes me think about the idea of something being indifferent, like learn to be indifferent, which is not like advice that most people get, or even really think about, like, because you could make a case that the excitement or the anxiety, if you explored it like you were talking about, well, what's like, what are you excited about? Like, you're excited that you got this promotion that maybe your heart's not in the right place about. Maybe this is more about you, which some of this stuff connects with, like, from a Christian context, the sin of pride in a way where it's about you and your desires, and there's actually maybe other people that are, you know, better aligned or more suited or prepared for said particular task. So it is interesting. It's like, but the idea of being indifferent about something kind of gets a negative thing. It kind of connects with, you know, apathy or nihilism instead of like it should. And if we think about it in the correct context, maybe with wisdom, like being indifferent is, lots of wisdom, knowing what matters, what doesn't. And then it just comes back to this virtue is the only good type of thing. Well, does this have anything to do with that? And it can, but it's just worth exploring. Like, well, what is this about? What's the cause of this anxiety? And kind of like peel the onion layers back to, see what's going on. And a writer that I like that I included in this particular episode is Kierkegaard. He was like seemingly like fascinated by the topic of anxiety. And he said it's just something we have to front. To paraphrase a bit, he'd say, learning to know anxiety is an adventure that each of us has to face. And he calls anxiety like the best teacher. And it is an interesting thing of like, as anxiety is like a pathway to know ourselves, to know, what we care about, to know whether our desires and aversions are actually ordered towards the highest good and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful input. Anxiety is a wonderful input because it can show you ultimately what you care about. It can show you what you're worried about, and you can use it to study yourself. I mean, a lot of people, when you're talking about anxiety these days, they're referring to being anxious about meeting a new person. Right? This is like, you hear this all the time. And newsflash, most people are like this. Most people do have a bit of anxiety about meeting a new group of people or introducing themselves to someone new. Obviously, if through a lot of people through work, you tend to do this pretty regularly, so you do get accustomed to it. But that's a very natural thing, and you think about what that means. It's like, well, yeah, I'm anxious because I want to feel accepted. I want to feel like a member of the cosmopolis, in another phrase. And so I'm not labeling that as a good or bad thing in any way. What I'm saying is that you can use the feeling of anxiety like you do any other emotion and study yourself with it. Find out what you care about. Find out where you're lacking, and then ultimately improve upon such things.
Yeah. Man, how do you think about that in the way of Epictetus says something which I included in that. It's like, stop giving yourself needless trouble. Like, are you able to do that? Like, if you say explore it, peel it back, look at it, and notice that maybe I'm kind of like worried for no reason, where it's like, come what may. Like, you notice that you're kind of crystal ball gazing into the future. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's like, how do you think about like actually putting that into practice? Because that can be much easier said than done.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if you can necessarily, like, you can with anxiety, and over time you can dissect it and take it apart. But I think a lot of times it's your reaction to things. Like, I think like many emotions and how you manage emotions in Stoicism, you get to choose your reactions on a daily basis, and you don't really have a lot of control or any control over that initial response. But if you manage your reactions appropriately day in, day out over time, you do have an impact on your ability or those initial reactions that you have. Meaning, if let's say you get nervous about shaking someone's hand, and you always get a bit of anxiety about it. So you go up, you say, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to shake this person's hand. I'm going to look them in the eye. You do it. You mess it up. You stare at their feet. Your palm is sweaty. Your your knees weak, and then you have this large amount of anxiety. And it's like, okay, well, you're 14 years old. That's okay. You're a kid. It's okay. Go back, take it apart, digest it, figure out what was wrong. Well, just talk about it. Listen, just be flat out. I was anxious. I was anxious about this. I was nervous. This person was intimidating, whatever the situation might be. And then the next time you meet someone, maybe you screw it up just as bad, maybe worse. And then you go back and you dissect it again. And then 20 years go by. You had 10 years working in as a professional. You've shaken so many hands. It's just normal to you. And when you're 14, do you have any control over that initial reaction that you get? It's like, to a large degree, no, you don't. Like, you have control over how you deal with those emotions, and that you're trying your best. I mean, maybe even extending your hand is a miracle. And then you have control over journaling about it and trying to dissect it. But if you do that, if you maximize your agency on your reaction every day over the course of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you start to stack the cards in your favor in terms of that initial response. You start to be able to actually have control over it. So it's important to, I guess, separate like in the present moment versus how far progress can actually take you, again, over decades. I'm not talking about in a week. I'm talking about over the long scale, right?
Yeah. It is, I don't know, it's kind of funny when you think about, like this ancient school of philosophy or like philosophy in general, sometimes being called like therapy for the soul, where it's just like learning to relax a little bit. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Like even if it's like you do something dumb, you do something unvirtuous, which is like more of a stretch, and I don't know. Let me get your thoughts on this, but it's like it's not that big of a deal. It's like kind of a short memory. It seems like as they're navigating some of these things, Epictetus on the cause of anxiety. Just relax a little bit. Focus on like what's up to you, what's not up to you. But here's the idea, like something I've been curious about, and maybe we'll have to continue this conversation next time. But it's around like character. So character, this is what's valuable. It's character. If it doesn't harm your character, then it doesn't harm you. But sometimes we do dumb things. Like we just do things that are not necessarily kind or considerate, whatever it may be. Does that actually harm our character? Like if I was to ask, like in a way you could say yes, but then in another way, well, no. Like you're not exactly your actions. It's just like another day. You just learn from it and press on. But then if that's the case, like can anything harm our character?
Yeah, I would say that this is where it gets a little harsh, I guess, but I would say that yes. I mean, as you stumble and you fumble with the ball, a lot of times, yes, it is a result of what the Stoics will call some form of poor character, and I think for me, and I'm a bit more, this, I'm a bit more of a tough love kind of guy, but I'm more willing to. I'm happier saying, you know what, I'm a POS, and that's fine. I'm going to aim up, and I'm going to have faith that if I continue to do this over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I can see improvement over the long scale. So I guess to answer your question is the 14-year-old who can barely introduce himself and has no life skills and is fumbling the ball. It's like, yeah, I can't call you a Stoic sage. I definitely can't say that. But I also don't hate you for it. I also have a full understanding of where you are on your journey. And I also have a full understanding that maybe I'm further along on the journey, but I'm at the same elevation. I'm not on a mountain. We're at ground zero here, man. I walked a little bit longer than you. So again, some people gravitate more towards the self-compassion. I don't. I'm a tough love kind of guy. I'm a, yeah, of course. I say to myself all the time and in a comedic way, but I'll say, of course you made a mistake. You're an idiot, and some people would hear that and think, I'm beating myself up all the time. But that's a relief to me. It's a relief to me to accept that, yeah, I'm not perfect, and you know what? That's okay. It's really okay. So that's the way I gravitate towards. Yes, accept where you are, but you don't have to feel bad for it. Just try and get better, and you will.
Yeah. We might need to end on a more positive note than that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I totally get what you mean, but it's also when you say, I'm an idiot. It's not period dot. Like as you're talking about, it's like, yeah, but we're learning and we're pressing on, and this train is moving. But something that's maybe a weird thing to think about, but I think it's interesting, and we'll have to put a pin in it and for a future conversation. in the way of it is like low character, if you will, to commit some sort of vice. Yeah, there's nothing like high character about it, but to actually like honestly admit it and be able to, you know what, I want to do. I don't want to do this again tomorrow. I'm aiming up. I'm moving forward. There's something high character about that. So this particular mistake, if you will, vice, it's like, I don't know, is it really? Because then it's like the wisest move is to accept responsibility. You know what? I can do better than this. I have more to learn, and I'm whatever. And, I mean, it seems common sense, but in practice, it's actually like a pretty difficult thing to do some honest reflection, not beat yourself up about it, but still like move forward and turn it into some sort of learning opportunity. So it's like a weird thing of like, what does it mean to damage your character? I would think you would have to not admit it, not reflect, not repent, not want to do better in the future for something to really harm your character. But I don't know. I got to think more on it. Well, good stuff, man. Always good to chat with you. If listeners are not already subscribers, I highly recommend everybody subscribe to the Strong Stoic podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, along with the Substack, which I'll link both of those in the show notes, so it's easy to find, which is by the same name, the Strong Stoic. Brandon Tumblin, as always, man, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, my man. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Dying Every Day, Stoicism in a Year. I hope you found something useful for daily life. If you enjoy what we're doing here and want to support the project, consider becoming a Perennial Meditations member. And finally, as always, I urge you to put what you heard into practice. Until next time, be wise and be well.